When an old man falls for a younger customer, he seeks a doctor to help him perform better. Surprisingly, this consultation leads him to his destiny as an interdimensional rock star. After Keith opens his item shop, a mailman delivers a DVD for an Invasion of the Body Snatchers parody movie, which he puts up for sale. Later on, his regular customer arrives and buys the same DVD. As Keith processes his payment, the customer heads to the back room to pay his dancer for a private performance. During this, a pink-haired woman named Cece arrives. Drawn to her, Keith asks if she lives in town, so Cece mentions that she works at the coffee shop at the gas station. Just then, they hear the other customer satisfied with the dancer. To distract her, Keith offers Cece the DVD for free, and the woman happily accepts before leaving. The other customer returns and asks for his DVD, but Keith pretends that he never bought one. Pissed, the customer points out that he always buys a movie before visiting his dancer, and when Keith doesn't explain, he decides to never return to the shop again. That night, Keith drives home and stops to refuel at the gas station. There, he notices the closed trailer nearby with the coffee shop logo, reminding him of Cece. Before he can check if she's there, another man nicknamed Wrongdoer 1 flicks his lit cigarette at him before driving off. While continuing his drive, a homeless man stops Keith's car and warns him that they're all being programmed. The store owner merely closes his window on him before driving off. At home, Keith live streams his podcast where he talks about extraterrestrial encounters. Tonight, his guest is Jack Rogers, who claims to have been abducted by aliens and given an implant on his leg. Jack recounts that while they operated on him, music was playing. Until now, he always dreams about that same music. His story goes on for so long that they run out of time before they discuss the implant, so they save it for part 2 of the interview. The next day, Keith finds Cece waiting for him at his shop with coffee. She hands him the cup and deliberately brushes her fingers on his. The cup is also marked with her lipstick, showing that she drank from it already. Keith takes a sip and asks if she watched the movie he gave her, but she reveals that she gave it to someone else since she's not into aliens. Instead, she's interested in women falling for much older men. The hint makes Keith nervous. Cece giggles at this before heading to the back of the shop. Keith then answers a call from a customer who ordered some gloves, though the man hasn't checked if it arrived yet. Still, the customer decides to go to the store to see. Cece returns and asks him to suggest a movie for her. Keith recommends one about an old professor who falls in love with a younger woman. However, he has this movie at his home, not at the store. With this, Cece decides to go to his apartment tonight. Right as she exits, Wrongdoer 1 passes by and calls her attention. Cece sees his eyes glow, and suddenly, she starts bleeding from her nose before collapsing. Seeing this, Keith takes her back to the store. He asks if she saw the man in the car, but the last thing Cece remembers is leaving the store and feeling excited about their date. As if unable to wait for tonight, Cece orders Keith to lock the door and meet her in the back. However, when they have their privacy, Keith struggles to get things going. This disappoints Cece, so she leaves. Just then, the customer who ordered the gloves arrives, but his encounter with Cece frustrates Keith, so he sends him away. That evening, the man waits for his date, but she doesn't show up. Keith drives to the gas station to check on her, only to find that her trailer isn't there anymore. Suddenly, Wrongdoer 1 arrives. Recognizing the car, Keith leads him to be blocked by the homeless man from yesterday, but the man just throws a dollar bill to distract him before shooting him. A cell phone in his pocket catches the bullet, so Wrongdoer 1 decides to beat the homeless man instead. That evening, Keith has a dream about Cece being with his previous customer. When she turns to him, Cece sees Wrongdoer 1 aiming a gun at his head, so she warns Keith that he's in danger. Keith wakes up and thinks his dream is about his physical frustrations. And so, he goes to a Vitality doctor's website and watches his ad where a man fails to rise to the occasion. There, the doctor announces that he's accepting volunteers for a new cure. Curious, Keith goes to the clinic the next day. While waiting his turn, a woman shares that her husband hasn't satisfied her in a while, so if the doctor doesn't fix this, she might find her satisfaction elsewhere. Just then, her husband returns to the lobby and shows that his excitement for her is back. This delights his wife. Keith then sees the doctor, who asks about Cece. This surprises Keith since he hasn't mentioned her yet. However, the doctor just tells him that him being there is no coincidence. He then gives his patient some medicine, and despite not knowing what it is, Keith drinks it. Just then, Keith hallucinates the doctor turning into Cece, who climbs over him. He then finds himself in a completely white bee farm with 3 beekeepers watching him. Afterward, Keith is transported to a rock concert where he leads a band named Off as the vocalist. After the performance, the band heads backstage, but hears the audience demanding an encore. The bassist, Autry, introduces the rest to his date, Nina, and the others are stumped at how he always gets the ladies. Keith later heads to his car but doesn't recognize wrongdoer 1 as the driver. Just then, Cece goes to his window and warns him that he's in danger. However, the driver speeds off despite Keith's protests. The man eventually stops the car and orders Keith to get out while holding him at gunpoint. He then makes him kneel before shooting him. Keith wakes up back at the clinic where the doctor explains that he saw another version of his life. However, he must step into the shoes of who he was meant to be and alter his fate. Keith comments that his other self couldn't have survived that gunshot, so the doctor suggests that if he gets his band together, they can be strong enough to save humanity. Without question, Keith agrees. With that, the doctor takes Keith to meet his guitarist, Dimitri, who, in this world, is a successful music executive. In his office, Dimitri seduces one of his younger employees. Outside, the doctor controls his secretary's mind to let them in. Dimitri is surprised by their presence, forcing him to send his employee away. With the men alone, Keith tells Dimitri that he's the vocalist of their band, Off. However, the man thinks he's crazy, so he calls security on them. Before the guard arrives, the doctor comments how Dimitri is unhappy, since he succeeded in an industry he doesn't care about. He used to love music, but when his father died, he had to choose a more stable job in business to ensure his family's future. With the man knowing a past he never told anyone, Dimitri decides to send the guard away. He then asks the doctor how he knows his life, but the man responds by giving him a glass of liquor. After he drinks, he hallucinates the doctor turning into his father. The man advises him that there's another option he can take where life doesn't get in the way of his music. Dimitri breaks down, admitting to his father that he's unhappy. With this, his father advises him to be the man he's meant to be. Suddenly, Dimitri goes into a trance as his mind is transported to the bee farm with Keith. He then sees the alternate world where he's the guitarist in Off. Turns out, after Keith left that night, Dimitri saw Cece panicking outside. The woman told him that the driver would kill their vocalist, so Dimitri took Cece into his car to chase after them. However, they lost sight of the car until they heard the gunshot that ended Keith's life. Seeing this, Dimitri exited his car and ran to the gunman, only for him to get shot as well. With Dimitri convinced about their fate, he joins the others in searching for their guitarist, Autry, whom they find in a spiritual group led by a man named Wee. Before they can approach Autry, Wee greets them, particularly the doctor, whom he knows. The doctor asks to speak with Autry, but Wee insists that whatever they need to tell the man must go through him first. In their beliefs, the path to enlightenment doesn't allow secrecy, but the doctor reminds him that they used to be on the same path of enlightenment. With this, Wee decides to speak to the doctor alone. While the others wait outside, the doctor comments on Wee's necklace, recognizing it from Planet X. He then reveals that Autry is part of Off. To prove this, the doctor shows him a vision of the band's concert. Convinced, Wee goes to Autry and tells him that he has been chosen, so he must leave. And so, Autry joins the rest in the car, where the doctor tells Keith to drive to the hospital. During the drive, the doctor gives Autry the medicine to give him a look into his alternate world. He's immediately transported into the world where he's Off's guitarist, impressing Nina from the crowd. After he introduced Nina to the band, the two left in Autry's car. During the drive, she asked him to stop at the store near the gas station. There, the woman headed to the store and gestured at 2 police officers who were parked nearby. As if controlled by the woman, the officers held Autry at gunpoint. A black-eyed Nina then called Autry's phone, and when he moved to answer it, the officers shot him. He wakes up back in the car with the doctor, just as they near the hospital. The doctor explains that their drummer is in a coma there after a car accident. In truth, however, someone tried to kill him and covered it up as an accident. The group soon reaches DH's room, but before the doctor receives a call from his lab, his scientist reports that their antidotes have been depleted since there was a breach. The doctor insists that their harvest realm is impenetrable, but the scientist suggests that there was an interference with the bees. This makes the doctor worry that their enemy is onto them, so he decides to inject DH with the medicine. Given that he's in a coma, they're not sure if it'll work, so Autry prays for guidance, which we hears. Soon, a bee appears in the room, confirming to Autry that we is with them. With this, the doctor injects DH, and the bee stings him, waking him up. The man who tried to kill him, who turns out to be wrongdoer 2, senses this. With DH awake, the doctor instructs everyone else to drink the medicine so they can go to the other world together. Unbeknownst to them, wrongdoer 2 has arrived in the hospital. While the band members are passed out, wrongdoer 2 confronts the doctor, whose eyes glow white. This counters wrongdoer 2's powers, so while the doctor escapes, a nurse discovers his enemy's broken body, along with the unconscious men. In the bee farm, Keith, Dimitri, and Autry discover that the beekeepers are wrongdoer 1, wrongdoer 2, and Nina. They then return to the rock concert, but this time, they're in control of their alters' bodies. And so, after the concert, Keith confronts their manager outside, who has led wrongdoer 1 to him and has kidnapped Cece. As wrongdoer 1 drives off with Cece, Keith kills the manager. The doctor arrives in a van, so Keith and Dimitri get in. Meanwhile, Autry is in his car with Nina, but when she later heads to the gas station store, he steps out of his car to confront the cops. At the same time, the store clerk turns out to be Wee, who tosses a gun over to Autry. This allows Autry to shoot down the cops. Hearing this, Nina rushes out and battles with Wee telepathically. Autry tries to aim for Nina, but Wee tells him to leave. As Autry drives off, Wee continues his battle, only to be shot by one of the cops that survived. Nina then proceeds to take his necklace. Soon, the group confronts wrongdoer 1. The doctor fights him using his mind, allowing Autry to shoot wrongdoer 1's knees, making him fall. Keith then runs him over with the van, killing him. With the enemy defeated, Keith rushes to wrongdoer 1's car to save Cece, but she's not there. During this, DH arrives at the bee farm where he faces his beekeeper, the bee that woke him. He's then sent to the other world where he's competing in a drum battle after their concert. Soon, his group, Nina and wrongdoer 2, arrive at the venue. Seeing her alive and wearing Wee's necklace, Autry realizes that his mentor was defeated. Angered, he moves to shoot her, but the woman uses her power to push him, making him accidentally shoot DH's opponent. This has the crowd dispersing while Nina controls Dimitri, who had taken wrongdoer 1's gun. She makes him aim the gun on himself, but the doctor fights her. Wrongdoer 2 then helps his ally, and the doctor gets outnumbered and defeated. Seeing this, DH stabs wrongdoer 2 with his drumsticks, while Dimitri regains control and shoots Nina. This also breaks Autry from her spell, so he shoots the woman too. The band gathers around the dying doctor, who's happy that they can now make music to free the world. The doctor then takes his last breath, dropping a business card that contains his lab's address. Just then, the doctor's phone rings, so Dimitri answers it. The scientist congratulates them for their victory, but also mourns the doctor's demise. He then tells them to go to the lab where their next journey awaits. Their victory has also saved their antidotes, so they must use their music to open the human consciousness so they can cross all planes of existence. Unbeknownst to them, Nina is still alive. The band heads to the laboratory where the producer escorts them to their control room. On the way, he teases how, if experienced with their antidote, their music will open the human subconscious to the ultimate pathway to travel. In the control room, a soundproof room is prepared for them to create their music. The scientists will record the music into a vinyl to avoid digital interference. The album jackets will contain the lab's antidote, which will induce a dream state to the listener. Their performance will also be broadcast live, and each viewer will receive a free copy of their album. With all these set, the band is given the antidote before they begin performing. After the performance, Keith's mind returns to the bee farm where he faces Cece and gives her a paper bag. Not long after, the rest of the band also crosses the bee farm. This time, they face a memory of the doctor, and the trio become the new beekeepers. Days later, a man receives a copy of the new vinyl and plays it. As he listens, he notices part of the album cover tearing easily. He puts the piece of paper in his mouth and enjoys the antidote's effects and the music. This transports his mind to an alternate universe where he goes to Cece's coffee shop. Instead of coffee, she gives him another piece of paper that she calls a ticket. The doctor arrives and asks if he heard Off's song. When he confirms, both the doctor and Cece rejoice. They then see more listeners arriving, so the doctor tells his ally to move on to Plan B. Hearing this, Jack realizes that the music he heard when he was abducted was Off's song. To prove this, he gives Cece the device the aliens put in his leg, and the moment she touches it, The woman starts seizing before collapsing. The doctor takes her home where Cece dreams about the paper bag Keith gave her in the bee farm. She wakes up and immediately returns to her trailer to retrieve the bag, which contains the Body Snatchers parody DVD. Suddenly, Jack, who's in her trailer, gets a headache. Cece checks outside and realizes that Nina is there. Nina controls her to hand over the DVD, but she's suddenly defeated by Wee, who tells Cece to run. Cece escapes while Wee retrieves his necklace from his enemy. Cece runs to a concert hall where she hands the DVD to the doctor. He opens the box and finds an interplanetary disc, which he inserts into a module. The doctor's voice plays from the disc and instructs the audience to consume their tickets. The audience does so, and Cece summons off to the stage, beginning another concert. During this, the doctor and Wee face the scientist, who's happy that they've succeeded. 6 months later, Cece lounges by the pool of her luxury home with her boyfriend Keith. Unbeknownst to them, the bodies of those who traveled using their song remain in their world, wide-eyed as if possessed.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.